Yeah, that's impossible. We live together, after all, Emily said with a smirk. You just have to sign the divorce papers. Good luck living in poverty. With that unilateral phone call ended, I stood dumbfounded. My lawyer, Jake, couldn't hold back his laughter and burst out chuckling. Emily looked at Jake with a puzzled expression as he wiped tears of laughter with a handkerchief. My apologies, Jake managed to say between laughs, but the president is your wife, isn't she? My name is Rose. I've been married to my husband John for 2 years. We don't have children, and both of us are busy with work, even on weekends. We hardly have time to talk leisurely, passing each other by. Despite this, we managed to synchronize our schedules for a yearly overseas trip. When we married, we decided to stretch and purchase an upper-floor apartment in the Bay Area, banking on its future asset value. Thanks to this, we're content with our lives. Emily, a close friend from high school, joined me for lunch one day at a cafe near the park. She's still single and has high standards for men, especially in education and income, often checking dating apps. Despite our differing lives now, we share a deep bond and know each other's romantic histories. After 2 years, Emily finally asked if she could visit my apartment, a place she'd never seen before. On the weekend, Emily arrived, and her amazement was palpable even through the intercom. Wow, this is amazing, she repeated as I opened the door. It's so huge, and that elevator ride took forever. I had chosen this large apartment as a once-in-a-lifetime purchase without any compromises, akin to a spacious detached house. It's truly beautiful, Emily remarked, admiring the high-floor penthouse and luxurious interior design. It must have been expensive. Yes, it's a $6 million apartment with excellent security, I replied. Emily's eyes widened in awe. Your husband must be very wealthy. Emily nodded, her expression thoughtful. Can I use your bathroom? She asked abruptly, leaving me momentarily puzzled in the living room. I directed Emily to the bathroom and started preparing tea in the kitchen. Concerned when she took longer than usual, I was just about to check on her when Emily returned. I was in the midst of replying to an email, which wasn't typical for her. A slight discomfort lingered as we enjoyed tea and the cookies Emily had brought. She asked if she could stay until evening, mentioning she wanted to say hi to John. It had been since our wedding that Emily had seen him, so her request seemed natural. I decided to check with John, who readily agreed. Looks like I'll finish work early, he replied in his email. I informed Emily it was fine and began preparing dinner. While I cooked, Emily fiddled with her smartphone before heading back to the bathroom. Unaware of the time passing, I eventually noticed her absence. When Emily returned, I noticed she was wearing a familiar necklace. On closer inspection, I realized it was mine. As I stared at the necklace, Emily flashed an embarrassed smile. How do I look? Does it suit me? She asked, striking a playful pose. Taken aback, I began to express my surprise, but Emily quickly laughed it off. Oh no, I'm just joking. I happened to find it and thought it was cute. It must be very expensive, she continued, almost childlike in her excuse. It's not only costly but also has a premium value. I couldn't help but mention, that's a gift from John. Emily sighed in admiration. Wow, that's impressive to be able to afford something like this. However, the necklace had been stored in our bedroom closet. It dawned on me that Emily, under the guise of using the bathroom, must have ventured into our bedroom and peeked into the closet. I couldn't believe such behavior, but chose not to criticize Emily, feeling it wasn't the right moment. I emphasized the necklace's importance, and seeing that I wasn't criticizing her, Emily started proposing something outrageous. Can I borrow this necklace for a while? I'm meeting a doctor I got to know through a dating app soon, and I want to wear it, she pleaded, clasping her hands together as if praying. Though I felt uneasy about refusing, I reluctantly agreed to lend it. Okay, but please take good care of it. As I said earlier, it's a gift from John. As soon as Emily knew she could borrow it, she started smiling and gently caressing the necklace. It seemed my words didn't quite get through to her. After finishing some preliminary cooking preparations, I pretended to go to the bathroom but actually went to check the bedroom. As expected, the closet and bedside chests weren't properly closed. Emily must have opened every drawer and door. There were fingerprints on my jewelry, watches, and precious metals. Emily had touched them, but apparently, borrowing them didn't cross her mind. Some shoes looked like they had been forcibly worn, their heels deformed. This was clearly going too far. I returned to the living room and confronted Emily. You touched various things in the bedroom, didn't you? The shoes are deformed, and there are fingerprints on the watch. Instead of becoming contrite, Emily puffed her cheeks slightly. Please stop going through my stuff, she replied, returning to her usual expression and apologizing with a sorry. Not wanting to damage our friendship over this, I decided to let it go with a light laugh. Just then, John arrived home, holding a box of cake. It was the first time John and Emily had met since our wedding. Initially awkward, they gradually warmed up to each other, and dinner became lively. By the time we enjoyed the cake John had brought, he and Emily were chatting like old friends. While I cleared the dishes and washed up, they laughed together amiably. "Isn't my boss terrible? I wish I had a boss like you," John said with a grin, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "Ha ha ha," he chuckled. Emily's casual touches towards John bothered me, but I reasoned it was better than them being distant. Looking back, I realized I was naively thinking that way. After all, John wasn't Emily's type. About a month after Emily's visit, John's behavior began to change. He started spending more time on his smartphone, something he hadn't done much before. During our conversations, John often seemed distracted, asking me to repeat myself several times. His smartphone was always within reach, even in the toilet or bathroom. The change was obvious, and I began to feel like a cheated wife. I briefly considered checking John's phone, but hesitated to invade his privacy. Conversations between us at home dwindled, and John started working excessively on weekends, something rare before. Originally, we barely saw each other on weekdays, and now weekends felt the same, almost like living separately. To make matters worse, John and I began sleeping in separate rooms under the pretext of being tired. As thoughts of divorce or separation lingered vaguely in my mind, I stumbled upon divorce papers on the living room table one day. Upon closer inspection, I noticed John had already signed them. Shaken by the reality of the situation, despite having considered it a possibility, I called John with trembling hands. "Just got home and found divorce papers on the table." "What does this mean?" I asked, my voice quivering. "It means just that. I want to divorce you," John replied bluntly. Wanting to understand, I pressed John for an explanation. According to him, "I've found someone. I love you. This isn't just an affair. I'm serious about it." John's words sounded like a fantasy, but it was nothing more than an affair. Then I heard a familiar female voice over the phone. It was Emily's voice. As I had suspected, it confirmed my fears. "I'm dating John, and I'm thinking about marrying him," Emily's voice over the phone quickened my heartbeat and brought on an unpleasant sweat. Although I had suspected it, having it confirmed like this was unsettling. "When I met John at your house, it was love at first sight," Emily continued casually. "We exchanged contact information and started messaging. Gradually, it led to, Emily's manner of speaking had become crude. Maybe this was her true nature. "John says there's nothing left to talk about. Can you just sign the divorce papers and send them off quickly? I want to move forward," Emily demanded. "Tell John to come back home." "Yeah, that's impossible. We're living together. You just have to sign the divorce papers." "Good luck going back to living in poverty," I replied before ending the call. I stood dumbfounded for a while, holding the phone after the one-sided conversation ended. Many sleepless nights followed. John didn't come back home, and I couldn't bring myself to touch the divorce papers left on the living room table. They just sat there, untouched. Moreover, Emily sent me several photos of her and John together, flaunting their relationship. It was clear they were close, but I couldn't understand why they were treating me like this. My mental health deteriorated. I looked pale and sometimes felt vacant even during the day. Concerned friends suggested I see a therapist, and I reluctantly started taking medication, which helped me regain some peace and improved my sleep. I managed to go to work, but then an unbelievable incident occurred. When I returned home from the hospital, something felt off inside the room. When I checked the bedroom closet, bags and jewelry were missing. The count of jewelry and watches in the chest was off too. There was only one person who could do this. Why would she go this far? What had I ever done to deserve this? My insomnia returned, and I spent my days dazed and sleepless. During counseling at therapy, I mentioned the theft at home, and they sternly advised me to consult a lawyer. I contacted the company's lawyer, Jake, and arranged a meeting. The first thing Jake asked during our meeting was, "What would you like to do?" "I'll get a divorce. I want those two to face proper consequences," I answered immediately. I was surprised at myself. Just a short while ago, I was wondering what to do. It came out so easily from my mouth. Perhaps deep down, I did want to punish them after being tormented so one-sidedly. It felt fair to fight back. A week later, I received a call from Emily. I had sent her a certified mail. "Hey, what are you thinking? Sending a certified mail to my office?" Emily sounded furious, her voice filled with rage. "You should have expected at least this much for what you've done. Anyway, I've left everything to my lawyer now. I hung up the phone. Emily tried calling several times after that, but I ignored all her calls. Then, I received a call from John. I had sent his certified mail to his parents' home. Apparently, the affair had caused a huge uproar at his home. I wanted to laugh at his self-inflicted troubles but restrained myself. Not feeling satisfied with just leaving it to Jake, I decided to meet them. I wanted to confront them thoroughly. Jake arranged a meeting at his office a few days later. They reluctantly showed up at Jake's office. I expected them to bring their own lawyer, but they came alone. Emily burst through the office door roughly, John following, looking uncomfortable. "Finally, I get to meet you, you coward." Emily didn't hide her indignation, but John stepped forward to try and stop her. "Because of you always running away, our wedding keeps getting delayed." Emily seemed ready to throw her bag at me any moment, while John struggled to hold her back. I watched them with a pitiable feeling. Jake nodded at me slightly. "Please stay calm. Any violence or abusive language will result in immediate police notification." Emily stiffened at the mention of the police, and with Jake's intervention, both Emily and John calmed down and took their seats across the office table. The discussion began. "John, you were seeking a divorce, correct?" Jake started. Emily sat arrogantly while John slouched, looking diminished. "We agreed to the divorce. However, given the affair, we will claim damages. Do you have any objections?" John's face clouded over. "I'll agree to the divorce. Just don't contact us after paying the compensation." I quietly nodded in agreement. Emily looked displeased, perhaps expecting more resistance from me. As Jake started discussing the alimony amount, Emily snapped. "I said any amount is fine. We have more money than we know what to do with." She crossed her arms arrogantly. Jake looked at her with interest. "Oh yes, don't you know? John is the president of a jewelry company with an annual turnover of $67.6 million. John looked up, flustered, and tried to restrain Emily's arm. Her face flushed with excitement as she continued. "Damages for an affair are nothing to us. I'll even give you a fair share of the property." John desperately tried to calm Emily, but she shook off his hand and kept talking. "Your salary must be barely enough to live on, right?" Emily laughed. Jake couldn't contain his laughter and burst out laughing. Emily looked at Jake with a puzzled expression as he wiped tears with a handkerchief. "The president is actually this lady right here," Jake managed to say between laughs. Emily, unable to comprehend, gaped open-mouthed. John hung his head, his body trembling slightly. "John is just an employee without any title at the company. I am Rose's company's legal counsel," Jake asserted. Upon hearing this, Emily burst into laughter. "What are you talking about? Are you really a lawyer? Is it okay for lawyers to lie?" she taunted. Jake replied calmly, "Why not ask J.N. himself whether what I said is true or not?" J.N., meanwhile, was biting his lip, looking down. Emily, perhaps feeling uneasy, grabbed John's arms and started shaking him. "You said you were the president of a jewelry company with a turnover of $. Emily began, her grip tightening on John's arms as she became more frantic. "Answer me, it's not a lie, right?" In a faint, hoarse voice, J.N. whispered, "I'm sorry." The room fell into a deep silence at his admission. Emily's hands, which had been gripping John tightly, fell limply. "You said you were the president," Emily murmured to herself in disbelief. J.N.'s single apology plunged Emily into despair. Trembling, she stood up abruptly. "This is all a lie. There's no way you're the president," Emily accused me, pointing a finger. "Why didn't I know about this? After all, we shared everything. Just because we're best friends doesn't mean I share everything, especially with you. We're so obsessed with money." I replied calmly, meeting Emily's gaze directly without averting my eyes. Emily slumped down as if all her strength had left her. "Then what about that house?" she asked weakly. "Of course, the house is in my name, so John will be the one leaving," I stated firmly. Emily fell silent, and John kept his head in his hands. John probably didn't want to come here. He knew this would happen. I continued evenly. But not coming would have been worse. Whether he came or not, this was inevitable. Now, Jake interjected, "Let's begin to disclose the evidence." I had gathered the photos first, John and Emily together, the ones she had sent to my phone. Jake placed an IC recorder on the table and played the recorded conversation. "Why would you send me something like this? I was just sharing a bit of our happiness with you." Emily's voice played through the recorder. John seemed to be holding back tears. "Are you still clinging to him? I just want the divorce done quickly." "I know what you're clinging to," John's income. He's the president of a jewelry company with a turnover of $67.6 million, right? You hid it because you thought I might take it, right? Emily's voice was laced with accusation. Emily, embarrassed, covered her face with her hands. Hurry up and divorce. Leave that tower, man. It'll soon be mine. Too bad J.N. didn't come back. I'll give you as much alimony as you want, you poor thing. Your aim was not John but his money. I'm speechless at how John was deceived by that. John looked down, tears staining his pants. Emily and John fell silent. Do you really think this is the end? What else could there be? Jake's calm demeanor brought a sense of relief. John looked surprised. It seemed he didn't know anything about it. Hey, what's this about stealing? John asked, confused. Emily bit her lower lip and trembled. No, it wasn't me. I don't know anything about it. Jake placed an iPad on the table and played a video. The footage showed Emily sneaking into the bedroom, taking bags, jewelry, and other expensive items, stuffing them into her bag. Emily stared wide-eyed at the video. What's this? Why did you film this? Isn't this an invasion of privacy? Emily protested. John covered his face with his hands and sighed. Our house has surveillance cameras installed. Why didn't you tell me that earlier? I never thought you'd come to steal. This foolish exchange is giving me a headache, I added, feeling exasperated. And you used my keys without permission. I wanted them. Besides, it's your fault for not buying them for me. The two started arguing, ignoring Jake and me, leaving us dumbfounded. Please save the argument for later. Regarding this theft, we will file a report with the police, Jake interjected calmly. The police? Isn't that a bit much? I just borrowed my friend's things. I never said anything about lending those items to you, I replied calmly. Besides, you're not a friend or anything like that, you were just a classmate. So, I will be filing a police report. Emily's attitude shifted to resignation. Don't say that. I'll compensate, I promise. Just please no police. She began to kneel and apologize. Looking down at Emily coldly, I stated, You're going to compensate. The items you stole are worth more than your annual salary. Are you sure you can handle that? Emily was speechless. And that's not even including the damages, I added. Emily turned to John pleadingly, tears in her voice. Hey, you'll pay for me, right? Even if you're not a president, you make money. John nodded silently. He can't pay for you. He's about to be fired, I said bluntly. John looked shocked and turned his face towards me. Indeed, John hasn't been to work since leaving the house. Plus, with this commotion, there have been complaints from his superiors. But what about the property division? I'll pay with that, Emily interjected. That's not possible, Jake interjected. Rose and John have a prenuptial agreement regarding their assets. You haven't heard anything from John, have you? He never told you the inconvenient truths. I looked at John with disdain. Jake placed the contract on the table. The contract states that if the marriage lasts less than 3 years, neither party is entitled to claim assets from the other. You are currently in the 2nd year of marriage. Emily tried to grab and tear up the document. That document is a notarized deed, so you should handle it carefully. Tampering with it could be criminal, Jake cautioned. John, looking defeated, muttered, But what about the debts? You have savings, right? Use that to pay, Emily urged John desperately. I don't have savings. It seems there are some debts from less reputable sources, John admitted, his voice heavy with resignation. Emily slumped her shoulders in defeat. Her previously glamorous demeanor had vanished. It was her own doing. She got what she deserved. I thought to myself, watching them both exhaustedly muttering, this wasn't supposed to happen, and what do we do now? Deciding to leave the rest to Jake, I stood up. Emily, money isn't something you steal from others. It's something you earn through effort. The divorce was finalized without issue. John's belongings were packed and sent back to his parents' home. John's parents repeatedly apologized and even sent a letter of apology. Emily was investigated by the police for illegal entry and theft. My filing of the police report led to an investigation, and Emily was arrested after admitting to her crimes. Half of the stolen items had been sold, but the rest were returned. Despite the severity, her expression of remorse and willingness to compensate suggested a suspended sentence. However, Emily had other crimes. She was found to have been stealing from men she met through a dating app. This led to a likely prison sentence. Emily's overreaction to the mention of the police and crime now made sense. John, unable to live in Emily's apartment, moved to an old apartment in the suburbs. He struggled to find work due to his unexplained absence and poor work attitude from his previous job. currently making ends meet with day labor. I continue to receive regular updates about their whereabouts from Jake. After the divorce, I focus more on work. Currently, I'm working on expanding our company's jewelry distribution to Europe. The idea came during a long vacation to Europe, a ritual to shake off the bad luck after my divorce. I had the opportunity to connect with the owner of a jewelry shop in France over wine. We hit it off, and he agreed to display my company's jewelry in his shop. The owner, perhaps understanding the pain in my heart for my divorce, is a wonderful man. To be honest, I've been focusing on sales in France because I wanted to see him. It might be mixing business with pleasure, but after all I've been through, I think I deserve this perk.